Okay, I want you to imagine something for a second. You're just sitting there, completely relaxed, maybe eating your dinner, and then, out of nowhere, you get this overwhelming sense of danger. You don't see anything lurking in the shadows, you don't hear a twig snap or a floorboard creak, but every single instinct in your body is screaming at you to run. Now, here is the truly amazing part about that scenario. For a lot of mice and rats, they react exactly this way simply because a cat walked by an hour ago. How do they know? Are they actually smelling a predator in the dark, or are they literally born afraid of cats? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unravel one of nature's most famous rivalries and figure out what really drives a rodent's incredible disappearing act.
So, we've all seen the classic cartoon setup, right? A mouse spots a cat, its eyes bug out of his head, and boom, it blasts through a tiny hole in the wall. It seems totally automatic, but, cartoons love to exaggerate. Does this actually hold up in real life? Do baby mice automatically know to fear cats? Or is it something they have to learn the hard way after a terrifying close call? Well, it turns out this is a real biological mystery that scientists have spent a lot of time unpacking. And the answer totally flips how we think about fear itself. Okay, let's dive into this. Research shows us that a rodent's fear response to predators is what scientists call an innate behavior. Basically, that means this fear is built straight into their nervous system. Millions of years of evolution have hardwired it right in there. It requires absolutely zero prior experience. Literally, a mouse that has never, ever encountered a cat in its entire life will totally freak out when exposed to certain predator scents. Now, this doesn't mean they're picturing a cat in their minds. Instead, their brains are basically pre-programmed to recognize specific signals in the environment that scream danger. It's like a highly tuned, inherited alarm system. But what if the cat is totally silent? Well, that is where a rodent's superpower comes in, their extraordinary sense of smell. See, cats, just by existing and walking around, produce these highly specific scent molecules in their fur, their saliva, and their urine. Rodents act almost like biological chemical detectors. They intercept these signals and instantly decode them as massive red flags. It's kind of like getting a highly urgent, completely invisible text message saying, hey, a predator might be right behind you. They don't have to see the teeth or the claws to know they're in trouble. The chemistry in the air alone is all it takes to trip that innate alarm.
What's really wild to me here is the massive difference between how we experience the world and how a mouse does. As humans, we're extremely visual creatures. If we want to know if something's dangerous, we look for it. But mice, they lean heavily on smell and hearing. And the reason is actually pretty simple. They're tiny little animals trying to survive in a giant world, and they do most of their living in low-light conditions. When you're running around in the dark, your eyes aren't going to help you much, but your nose and your ears, those are lifesavers. Mice use scent to find their food, recognize their family members, mark territory, and, most crucially, to spot danger before it spots them. For a rodent, smell isn't just a sense, it is absolutely their primary survival tool.
And speaking of navigating in the pitch black, they've got another amazing trick up their sleeve. Those whiskers aren't just for looking cute. They actually function as incredibly sensitive environmental sensors. A mouse is constantly sweeping the area in front of it with its whiskers, trying to feel out the space to see if it can safely squeeze through a tiny gap. So the split second that invisible chemical scent of a cat hits their nose, those whiskers are already calculating the tightest, fastest getaway route, a route where a much bigger predator just literally cannot follow. But you gotta wonder, why did rodents even need to evolve such intense, hardwired defenses in the first place? Well, it's because they're up against the anatomy of the perfect hunter. Now, a cat might not be a marathon runner like a cheetah on the savannah, but in a low-light, confined space, their evolutionary toolkit is just devastating. We are talking excellent night vision, ridiculously sensitive hearing, and a powerful sense of smell. Add in those flexible bodies, soft paws for total silence, and reflexes that are just unbelievably fast, and you've got a predator perfectly engineered to counter everything a rodent can throw at it. The really critical thing to understand is how cats actually use those physical advantages. They aren't chasing prey over vast distances. No, cats are absolute masters of patient stalking. They wait, they watch. They use those padded paws to sneak up incredibly close, and then, bam, they unleash those lightning-fast reflexes for a precise ambush. It is entirely a game of stealth, not a foot race. And because that attack comes completely out of nowhere, the rodent's only hope, literally its only chance, is catching a whiff of the cat before the trap springs. That is exactly why those invisible scent messages are a literal matter of life and death.
Which brings up a super interesting question. Say a mouse grows up in a house with a totally friendly, lazy, well-fed domestic cat. Will it eventually just relax? Will it stop being scared? The short answer is mostly no. While experience can definitely tweak an animal's behavior over time, instinct is just way too powerful. Sure, they might get slightly more used to a routine, but recognizing a predator is deeply, deeply coded into their biology. Evolution brutally favors the rodents that panic at the first sign of danger. Why? Because out in the wild, hesitation is fatal. The mouse that stops to wonder if a cat wants to be friends? Yeah, that's the mouse that doesn't survive to pass on its genes.
But we should be clear about something. Cats are not the center of the rodent universe. Mice and rats are fighting a massive, multi-front evolutionary arms race. They are constantly dodging a huge lineup of predators. We're talking owls, snakes, foxes, hawks, bigger mammals, you name it. Their entire life is a 360-degree non-stop surveillance mission. They're scanning the grass for snakes and the sky for hawks at the exact same time. So while cats are incredibly good at what they do, they are just one specific threat out of an entire lineup that rodents have evolved to run from.
And to try and manage all these threats coming from literally everywhere, rodents use some pretty clever scheduling. It basically comes down to the number 2. There are 2 very specific times of day that most rodents choose to be most active: dusk and dawn. By scheduling their busy time during these twilight hours, they avoid daytime visual hunters, like hawks. But they also try to wrap things up before the hardcore night shift specialists, like owls, take complete control of the night. It is a highly strategic, calculated way to navigate a very dangerous world. And calculated really hits the nail on the head. We tend to think of prey animals as just acting on blind panic, but rats and mice are highly sophisticated survivors. They are incredibly smart creatures. They learn super complex routes through their environments. They can solve simple problems, and they have amazing memories for exactly where to find food. They are constantly updating a mental map of their world, learning where it's safe, where it's sketchy, and exactly which escape hatch to use the second they smell a cat. They aren't just surviving by accident. They are using serious brainpower to stay one step ahead. Now, if we flip the script and look at the predator side, we've got to understand the feline mind too. For a cat, hunting is this deep, primal instinct. It is absolutely not just about being hungry. You might look at your perfectly pampered, well-fed house cat and wonder why on earth they still chase animals in the backyard. Well, it's because that hunting drive is permanently baked into their biology, just like the fear response is baked into the mouse. Even if their food bowl is literally overflowing, millions of years of evolutionary programming are whispering in that cat's ear to stalk, chase, and pounce. What I really love about all this science is how practical it is for our own lives. Because caring for pets actually requires a deep understanding of these exact survival instincts. Like, if you keep a pet rat or hamster, you now know exactly why it is so incredibly important to give them secure hiding spots and a genuinely calm environment. You literally have to keep them away from animals they instinctively view as monsters, even if your pet cat is the sweetest thing ever. And on the flip side, if you're a cat owner, you kind of just have to accept that their urge to hunt is completely natural. Recognizing these hardwired behaviors is really the key to giving our pets the best, most stress-free lives possible. So why do mice and rats run from cats? Well, it's not because they went to a class on predator avoidance. It's because millions of years of unforgiving evolution have rewarded the rodents that instantly react to the invisible signs of danger. Nature set up this incredibly high-stakes dynamic, one animal perfectly built to hunt and the other perfectly built to escape. The next time you see a mouse dart away at a tiny sound, just remember, you are watching an ancient survival strategy play out in real time. Fear isn't always a weakness or some silly cartoon flaw. Sometimes, fear is the exact reason an entire species survives. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to chew on. If these ancient, invisible fears are still driving the survival instincts of animals today, what hidden, hardwired instincts are secretly running our own human lives without us even realizing it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep observing the world around you, and as always, keep learning.